Well, good morning. It's Sunday and another day for a mini lecture from me, Miss Gunn. So last week we were doing Greece and Rome, and we touched a little bit on the Byzantium Empire, which is Byzantine is the late Roman period. And today we're going to focus a little bit more on the transition from Rome to the Byzantine Empire. Now, Rome. What did Rome ever do for us? So I would offer that you go to YouTube and look for Monty Python, What Has Rome Ever Done for Us? Video. It's pretty hysterical and pretty spot on. So Rome really brings with it, the empire brings with it money, with roads and infrastructure, big deal. And there are a lot of small kingdoms that actually end up becoming part of the Roman Empire because the king dies and wills their kingdom to the Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire did not rule directly every one of these countries within its empire. So as its empire grew, there was a point in time when it was growing north into France. Thank you, Julius Caesar, Octavian, where we really get the movie, what's that movie with Russell Crowe? The Gladiator. And it goes all the way up into Germania, into Hadrian. Emperor Hadrian actually built a wall north in the British Isles, and it separates Scotland from Great Britain. And it was the Romans going into Great Britain that created the city of London, Londonium, and then there's York, and there are various other cities that were actually Roman fortresses before they became British cities as we know them today. So, and they use the latifundia system, Latifunda system, whereby the army generals and their colonels and majors were given a piece of land. Remember, land equals wealth equals power. So why would you be in the army? Of course, in order to be in the Roman army, you had to own land, but land was precious to everybody. Still is to us today. And when the Roman soldiers went north, they were given vast parcels of land, thousands and thousands of acres, and that latifundia system, which is where there was a manor house, and that's where the Roman general lived, or his majors, and then he had servants working for him, and that trickled into or turned into the manorial system and eventually feudalism. So it really, and then when we go forward into Spain in the Age of Exploration, it's the same kind of system that takes over the Spaniards learn from and take over and utilize when they go into Central and South America. But they call it the encomienda system instead of latifundia. So the Romans go north, but as the Roman Empire begins to shrink in the west, which would be Great Britain, and in Germany, Germania, and Spain, and Gaul, España, and Gaul, which is France, it begins to grow on the opposite side. So it begins to grow in Greece. It begins to grow in Macedonia, which is now its own country, but east of Macedonia is modern-day Turkey, and down into across the Bosporus Straits into the Levant, which is Syria and modern-day Israel, and then it goes east And because it's going east, and the majority of people live in the east, because why? Because that's the Fertile Crescent. That's Egypt. There's been people there for thousands of years. So duh, there's going to be a lot of people there. You've got a ton of commerce there because it's been there for thousands of years. And so, when Rome goes there, they're dealing with different kinds of issues, but basically they're expanding the empire, and there's a tremendous economic system, very complex monetary system like we have, that they're inheriting in their system. They bring roads, so they're increasing commerce. When they do infrastructure, they're making everybody wealthy because now you have a larger distance that you can bring your goods across. And so instead of just selling your goods in that city that you're in or that little microstate that you're in, you can now sell it into Rome. You can get a wagon train kind of, or a trading route over to Rome. So people like it. People actually like the Roman system. And as it begins to grow on the east, it grows, the capital of the Roman Empire moves, and it moves from Rome over to Constantinople because of Emperor Constantine. And Emperor Constantine lives in a world where, he feels that it is better to rule the Roman Empire from the east because there are more people in the east. But what does that do to Rome? Well, Rome in and of itself, and Italy in and of itself, reverts back to its original kind of way of living, which are city-states. Venice is a city-state. Genoa is a city-state. Florence is a city-state. Rome is a city-state. And they are all independent cities that are also states. And that's going to be important as we go forward into the Renaissance, because Italy is really going to lead the way there. Now, but here we are in this new city called Constantinople, which will eventually become Istanbul when the Islamic conquest comes in. So you've got all these people that are really in the Eastern Roman Empire, and who's left behind? As I mentioned in the previous lecture, who's left behind? The Pope, which is really originally just the Bishop of Rome. There were 5 bishops for Christianity that represented Christianity at that time, and one of those bishops was the Bishop of Rome. And the Pope still is called the Bishop of Rome. So keep that in mind. But now, as I mentioned before in the last lecture, he is not just the leader of Christianity, he's now governing. So he takes on duties that he didn't expect to take on. And so in the Western Church that rises out of the rule under the Pope of Rome, the Bishop of Rome rather, comes a Western version of Christianity that's going to be vastly different from the Eastern version of Christianity. So in the Western version of Christianity, for instance, Christianity comes, that the social hierarchy, that's the highest level. Then come the kings. So the kings are fight for a time between the church to see who has the most influence, who has the leverage, who has the most power. And there's a fight between them, and you'll see that when we get to Charlemagne and the rule of the Carolingians and the Franks in the medieval period in the Western Europe Christian church. But on the Eastern Church, we have now Eastern Orthodoxy, and eventually, as it goes north, the Roman Orthodoxy. So now, what also is important, as I mentioned before, is that Christianity finally becomes legalized. Now, the reason why Christianity was not legalized initially in Rome is because, believe it or not, it upset something that the Romans called mos maiorum, M-O-R-I-A-M, mos maiorum, which means traditional family values. So the reason why the Romans didn't like Christianity is because it upset traditional family values. Think about that. How we use that term, traditional family values. Kind of crazy pants, huh? So they thought they were cannibals, because remember, when you are taking communion, it is, this is my blood, drink this in memory of me. This is my body, eat this in memory of me. A lot of different people around the Mediterranean were practicing Christianity differently. It wasn't just one standard way. Even now, there's not one standard way, right? So some people were actually drinking blood, and some people were actually eating flesh. It was crazy, but true. And so initially they thought that the Christians were cannibals, and they didn't want them around. And the Romans had a thing also about people gathering together. They had a lot of religious mystery cults, because religion, while it was important to them, it did not have any moral or ethical implications to it. Religion had to do with just praying to the gods, but you didn't, like, for instance, in Judaic, Abrahamic religions that are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you don't do things that are wrong because it's not moral, because it's not ethical, because God gives you the ability to think and to understand what is right and what is wrong. Romans don't believe that. Romans believe that human beings do the right thing because it's the right thing. So you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, because it's not good for the community. So this is a pretty important distinction between the two. Now, so eventually, though, in 312, Christianity does become legal. In 325, we have the Nicene Council, where we get the Nicene Creed, but also where it is believed that Emperor Constantine becomes Christian. He converts to Christianity. I have to tell you, there's a lot of stuff out there that might prove otherwise, but that's up to you to choose. And if you ever wanted to seek information about that, please do. But nevertheless, Emperor Constantine brings in Christianity. Now, Emperor Constantine absorbs and embraces all of the progress and technology inherent in the Roman Empire. So roads, but not just roads. You have clean water. You've got all these aqueducts. You have clean water. You have a separate sewage system. You have apartment buildings made out of concrete. Yes, made out of concrete. You've got lights. The roads, the streets light up at night with fire. There's all kinds of, if you go back there now, you would be quite amazed at how modern and progressive it is, or it was. So the entire Eastern Empire maintains these characteristics of the old Roman Empire. Very progressive, bathing, huge trade, because of thousands of years of trade there. Monetary economy, very complex economy, all these things. It's now just adding in Christianity. Now, as we go forward, we are going to see that in the Eastern Roman Empire, which morphs into the Byzantium Empire, it maintains all of these new technologies, all these progressive things. I mean, it's just really amazing. While what was the Western Empire deteriorates, just becomes, and it turns into the medieval world. So keep that in mind. If you're in Europe and you're in the Western Empire, You are wearing the same clothes every day. You're not washing your hair. You're not really bathing every day. You got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And then in the Eastern Empire, it's like it always was in Rome, except that now it's called the Byzantine Empire, and it is driven by Christianity, not Catholicism like in the Western Empire, but it's driven also by Christianity. Now, eventually in 1054 AD, there's a schism between the churches, so a break between the church. That's what a schism is, and the Eastern Empire creates its own orthodoxy, and orthodoxy just means official religion, official doctrine, official rituals and rites that go along with their practice of Christianity, as opposed to the West. For instance, one of those things is that in the Eastern Orthodox Church, a priest must be married and have children if he is going to actually help people who have families. So, I mean, how else do you relate to them if you don't have your own children? So that's very different from the Western Church. There are many other things as well, but I want you to keep in mind as we go into this week, imagine, if you will, the Eastern Empire is like Tomorrowland compared to the Western Empire that is becoming over time just decrepit and decaying, and even people's minds are decaying. And while the church is important in the Eastern Empire to help people live and to praise God, in the Western Empire it becomes a mechanism of controlling people. And it naturally evolves that way because the Pope is now in a position of governance. And so with all that power, the Pope doesn't want to give it up, right? So it naturally evolved that way, and then it exponentially grows. So in today's and this week's discussion board question, we're going to talk about thinking about the difference between Tomorrowland and the medieval world. Can human beings, even if you're so advanced, can you decay? Is that possible to decay over time and revert back to something far more simple, but not just simple, but suspicious and not really believing everything you see and superstitious and things like that? Okay? So that's what your objective is for this discussion board question. Mwah! I love you, mean it, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.